My name is Sarah. I am 52 years old, and I work as a librarian. And on April 14th, 2023, I died in my own home. For 22 minutes, my heart did not beat. For 22 minutes, I was clinically, verifiably dead. What I saw on the other side, what I was shown, changed everything I thought I knew about life, about death, and about the world we live in. I met Jesus. And he showed me three great spiritual disasters that are unfolding right now, disasters that are meant to steal the very heart of humanity before the year 2027. And his warning, it should terrify all of us. My life before that day was, by all accounts, perfectly ordinary. I lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood with my husband, Mark, and our 17-year-old daughter, Emily. We had a mortgage, 2 cars, and a garden that was always slightly more overgrown than our neighbors. Life was a rhythm of predictable comforts and anxieties. The worry about retirement funds, the satisfaction of a freshly mowed lawn, the gentle hum of the refrigerator at night. My world was my work. I was a librarian, and I loved it. I loved the quiet, the smell of old paper and binding glue. I loved the order, the logic of the Dewey Decimal System. It was a universe where everything had a place, where every question had a knowable, cataloged answer. It was clean. It was controlled. My family, on the other hand, was not. They were beautifully, chaotically human. Mark, with his booming laugh and his projects that always left a trail of sawdust and stray tools. Emily, with the emotional tempests of a teenager, a whirlwind of joy one moment and silent, door-slamming fury the next. I loved them. I truly did. But if I am being honest, my real passion was my work. My family was getting what was left over. My core flaw, the one I kept hidden even from myself, was a kind of quiet, intellectual pride. I didn't see it as pride, of course. I saw it as a preference for substance. I read history and classic literature. They watched reality television and scrolled through social media. I saw my world of books as superior, more meaningful. I built a wall around my heart, a very quiet, polite, well-read wall. It kept the messiness of deep emotional connection at a safe distance. I could talk about the political climate of 19th century Europe with more ease than I could ask my daughter what was truly making her sad. I lived with them, but I was not always with them. My mind was often elsewhere, in the stacks, in the pages of a book, in that quiet, orderly world that made more sense to me than my own home. I prayed, but mostly out of habit, the way you'd recite a pledge you learned in childhood. The words were there, but the heart behind them was archived. Filed away. Just 2 nights before I died, that flaw was laid bare. I walked into the living room, and the only light was the bluish glow from Emily's phone. She was lying on the sofa, her thumb moving in a quick, endless scroll. Mark was asleep in his armchair, the television murmuring a low-budget documentary. The scene just irritated me. It felt like a waste. You know, I said, and my voice was sharper than I intended. There are books in this house. Thousands of them. Things that could actually enrich your mind. Emily didn't look up. I'm talking to my friends, Mom. It's not talking, I countered, feeling that familiar sense of superiority. It's typing. It's looking at pictures of people you barely know. It's empty. That's when she finally looked at me. Her eyes were hurt. Oh, and what you do is so much better, she asked, her voice laced with a sarcasm that only a teenager can perfect. Hiding in your books all day? At least I'm talking to someone. Who do you talk to, Mom? Besides the Dewey Decimal System. The words landed like stones. They were unfair, of course. But they were also true. Instead of admitting that, instead of sitting down and closing the gap between us, I just tightened my robe. Don't be ridiculous, I said coolly, and walked out of the room. I left her there in the blue light, the distance between us feeling as wide and as cold as a winter ocean. I had no idea that in just a few hours, that little, bitter moment would come back to haunt me with the force of a tidal wave. The day it happened was a Saturday. It was gray and drizzling, the kind of day that was perfect for staying inside. Mark was out running errands, and Emily was in her room, probably on her phone. I was in my element, reorganizing my personal library in our study. It was my sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, the air thick with that beloved scent of paper and time. I was reaching for a heavy volume of Shakespeare on a high shelf. I had a small wooden step stool, one I'd used 100 times before. I remember the feel of the book's leather spine under my fingertips. And then a sudden wave of dizziness. It was instantaneous and overwhelming. The room didn't spin so much as it tilted violently, like a ship capsizing. My foot slipped. There was no time to think, no time to cry out. There was only the sensation of falling backward, the gasp of air leaving my lungs, and a horrifying, final crack as my head hit the corner of the heavy oak desk. My last conscious thought wasn't of a great truth or a profound regret. It wasn't a prayer. It was just one word. My daughter's name. Emily. And then everything went black. Everything went silent. But it was not the end. The blackness was brief, a momentary blink. Then, there was a sensation. A feeling of release. It was a gentle tug, like a helium balloon being freed from a child's hand. I was floating. I opened my eyes, though I had no eyes. I was simply pure awareness. And I was looking down. I was near the ceiling of my own study, weightless and calm. Below me was the scene of the accident. It was like watching a movie. There was my body, lying crumpled and still on the floor. It looked like a doll, a discarded thing. The angle of my head was unnatural, wrong. A dark pool of blood was beginning to spread slowly on the Persian rug. I felt no connection to it. No pain. No fear. It was just a body. It was not me. I saw my daughter, Emily, open the study door. I saw the confusion on her face turn to absolute horror. Her scream was silent to me, but I saw it in the stark, white terror of her face, the way her hands flew to her mouth. I saw her run to my side, her phone falling from her hand and skittering across the floor. I saw her shaking my shoulder, her cries of "Mom, Mom, wake up," forming soundless words in the air. And I felt pity. Not for myself. For her. For her terror. I wanted to comfort her. I wanted to tell her, "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm right here. And I'm okay." But I had no voice. I was just an observer. I watched as she fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling so badly she could barely dial. I heard the distant, tinny sound of the emergency operator as she sobbed into the receiver. Mark burst through the door a few minutes later, his face ashen. He had come home to this nightmare. He knelt beside me, beside my body, his usual strength completely gone. He looked broken. I saw him check for a pulse, his face growing paler with each passing second. I felt a deep, profound sadness for them. For their pain. This serene detachment was the strangest part. I should have been terrified. I should have been panicked. Instead, I was bathed in a peace that made no sense. It was a peace that defied the horrific scene below me. The paramedics arrived. They moved with a frantic, practiced urgency. They swarmed the room with their equipment and their clipped, professional voices. No pulse. Starting compressions. Pupils are fixed and dilated. I watched them work on the empty shell that had been my body. It was surreal. I felt completely disconnected, as if I were watching a television drama and not the frantic fight for my own life. The peace around me deepened. It was a presence. It was warm. And as I watched them, the world below began to change. The edges of the room, the corners of the bookshelves, began to soften. The vibrant colors of the rug started to bleed into one another. The frantic scene was losing its focus, its solidity. It was like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. The details were dissolving, the forms becoming indistinct. The desperate faces of my husband and daughter became blurry, their silent cries fading into the background. The physical world was letting go of me, or I was letting go of it. It was like trying to hold on to the memory of a dream upon waking. It slipped through my consciousness, no matter how hard I tried to grasp it. The last thing I saw was the tear track on my husband's face. And then, it too dissolved into the gentle, peaceful nothingness that was enveloping me. The scene faded completely. I was left in a place that was not a place. It was a darkness, but not a scary darkness. It was a soft, velvety, comforting darkness. It was the darkness of a womb. It was safe. It was silent. It was a silence that was not empty. It was full. It was a silence that was itself a sound, a low, perfect hum of absolute peace. And in the center of this perfect, peaceful darkness, a single point of light appeared. It was small at first, like a distant star. But it began to grow, expanding slowly, gently. It wasn't a harsh light. It was warm, golden, and incredibly inviting. As it grew, it pushed the darkness away, not violently, but by filling the space with its own substance. The hum of peace I had felt intensified, originating from this light. It was a vibration of pure, unconditional love. I felt drawn to it, pulled gently but irresistibly forward. The light grew until it filled my entire awareness. I was inside it. I was part of it. And the feeling, there are no human words for that feeling. Every fear I had ever had, every anxiety, every insecurity, every secret shame from my 52 years of life was not just gone, it was healed. It was dissolved by this light, by this love, as if it had never existed. Imagine being lost in a frozen wilderness your entire life, shivering and alone, and then suddenly stepping into the warmest, most beautiful home you could ever conceive, with a fire blazing in the hearth and the smell of your favorite childhood meal cooking. It was like that, but a billion times more profound. It was the feeling of being completely, utterly, and finally home. And then I realized the light was not just a place. It was a person. A figure began to coalesce within the brilliance. He was not what I had expected from the paintings and the storybooks. There was no long white robe, no ethereal halo. His form was simple, strong. He looked like a carpenter, a worker. His presence was one of profound humility and unimaginable majesty all at once. He was made of the light itself, yet he was solid and real. And his face. I can't describe his face, but I can tell you about his eyes. His eyes contained everything. They held all the stars in the universe. They held a kindness so deep and so heartbreakingly pure that it made all the love on earth feel like a dim echo. When he looked at me, I knew I was being seen. Not just my appearance, not my actions. I was being seen to the very core of my soul. Every thought I had ever had, every secret I had ever kept, every mistake I had ever made, every flicker of pride, every moment of selfishness. He saw it all. And there was not one single ounce of judgment in his gaze. There was only love. A love so powerful, so complete, so unconditional, that it shattered me. I knew, with a certainty more absolute than my own name, that I was in the presence of Jesus. He didn't have to introduce himself. My soul simply knew him. My soul recognized its creator. And then he spoke. He didn't speak with a mouth. The words didn't travel through the air to my ears. The words bloomed inside my mind, inside my soul. They were as clear and as real as my own thoughts, but they were not mine. His first words to me were, "Welcome, little one. Be at peace. You are so loved." The sound of that love, the feeling of it, was too much to bear. All the walls I had built around my heart, the quiet pride, the emotional distance, they crumbled into dust. I was laid bare before him. I saw myself as I truly was, in the light of his perfection. And a wave of shame washed over me. Not a shame he put on me, but a shame that came from the stark contrast between his perfect love and my own flawed life. I saw the argument with Emily. I saw the hurt in her eyes, a hurt I had caused with my stupid, petty pride. I saw the countless times I had been physically present with my family, but emotionally a million miles away, lost in my own world. I saw every moment of impatience, every uncharitable thought, every failure to love. It all rushed through me, and the only possible response was to weep. Tears of profound joy at being in his presence, and tears of profound sorrow for the life I had lived. I fell to my knees. It wasn't a conscious choice. My spirit simply could not stand in the face of such holiness and love. I felt like a lost, dirty child who had finally been found by her father. I sobbed, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." He knelt with me. The creator of the universe knelt in the light beside my soul, and he radiated a comfort that soaked into my every fiber. Peace, his voice bloomed in me again. All is forgiven. All has always been forgiven. That is why I am here. He placed a hand of pure light on my head, and the shame vanished. It was washed clean. All that remained was gratitude. A deep, overflowing, endless well of gratitude. I stayed there for what felt like an eternity, just kneeling in his presence, soaking in a peace that heals all wounds. After a time that had no meaning, he gently helped me to my feet. His expression was one of infinite love, but now I could see something else in his eyes. A profound sadness. A sorrow that seemed to hold the weight of the entire world. "Sarah," his thought voice was gentle but firm. "There is something I need to show you." The luminous space around us began to shift. It was as if the light itself became a screen, a canvas upon which he could paint visions. First, he showed me myself. I saw dozens of scenes from my life, playing out with perfect clarity. I saw myself at the dinner table with Mark and Emily. They were trying to tell me about their day, their faces animated and eager. But I wasn't really listening. I was nodding, smiling politely, but my mind was on a book I wanted to finish. He showed me the golden thread of connection they were offering me, and how I just let it fall to the floor untouched. He showed me Emily, as a little girl, holding up a drawing for me. She was so proud. I was busy, distracted by some chore, and I gave her a quick, "That's nice, honey," without even truly looking at it. I saw the light in her eyes dim just a little. He showed me Mark, trying to share a worry he had about work. I offered him a logical, book-learned solution instead of the emotional comfort he was actually seeking. I saw the moment he decided to just carry the burden alone. This was not a condemnation. It was presented with an overwhelming gentleness. It was like he was sitting with me, showing me a family photo album and saying, "See this moment? See the love that was available right here? You just missed it." I felt a grief so deep it was a physical ache. A grief for all the missed moments, the untended connections, the love I had failed to properly receive or give. I was so foolish, I wept. "You were distracted," he corrected gently. "But your heart is good. Now, you must see what this distraction is doing to my world." The personal visions faded, and a new, larger one took its place. This is what he called the first disaster, the famine of the empty table. I saw a dining room. It was beautiful. A polished wooden table was laden with a magnificent feast. Roast chicken, steaming potatoes, fresh bread, everything you could imagine. A family was sitting around it. A mother, a father, 2 children. But no one was looking at each other. No one was eating the food. Each one of them, even the youngest child, was holding a small, glowing black rectangle. A phone. Their faces were bathed in its cold, blue light. Their eyes were vacant. Their thumbs moved in that same, endless, hypnotic scroll I had seen in my own daughter. And then he allowed me to see what was happening in the spirit. Each person had a soul that looked like a bright, warm flame inside their chest. But as they stared at the screens, their flames were flickering, shrinking, becoming dim and weak. Hovering behind each family member was a shadowy figure. It was thin and leech-like, made of smoke and greed. And these creatures were sipping the light from the family's eyes. They were feeding on their attention. The golden threads of connection that should have been weaving between the family members, from heart to heart, were frayed and cut. They lay on the floor in dusty, broken pieces. The family was starving to death in front of a feast of love. They were dying of thirst while sitting beside a well of connection. This, the Lord's voice filled me with a sorrow that mirrored his own, is the first disaster. It is a famine of the heart. The enemy, the thief, does not need to make them hate each other. He only needs to make them invisible to one another. He only needs their attention. He is stealing the family, one glance at a time. It is a silent theft of relationship, of belonging, of home. The vision faded, leaving me shaken to my core. "What can they do?" I asked. "Look up," he replied simply. "Just look up." Then the light swirled and formed a new vision. This was the second disaster, the idolatry of the mirrored hall. I found myself in a vast, endless hall. The walls, floor, and ceiling were all covered in mirrors. Crowds of people were wandering through this hall. But the mirrors did not reflect reality. When a person looked into a mirror, it showed them a perfected version of themselves. Their skin was flawless, their bodies were ideal, their clothes were perfect. The reflection smiled a confident, charismatic smile, even if the real person was filled with anxiety and sadness. And the people were mesmerized. They were falling in love with the lie in the mirror. They posed and preened before their own idealized reflections. They spent all their energy trying to make their real, physical selves match the impossible image in the glass. When a crack appeared in a mirror, or when it showed a brief, honest glimpse of a flaw, a wrinkle, a scar, a moment of sadness, the person would cry out in anguish and despair. They would scramble to find another mirror, another perfect lie to worship. Then the vision expanded. I saw people holding their phones again, but this time they were looking at images of celebrities, of influencers, of people living seemingly perfect, wealthy, beautiful lives. I saw them worshiping these images, feeling envy, feeling unworthy, feeling that their own simple, real lives were worthless in comparison. "Behold the second disaster," Jesus said, his voice a sad whisper. "They have forgotten that they are made in my image. Instead, they worship images of their own making. They worship the reflection in the glass. They worship dying stars of earth and ignore the one who created the stars and knows each one by name. The thief has convinced them that their value is in their appearance, their popularity, their perfection. He makes them chase a phantom, so they are too exhausted to seek the truth. They are creating and worshiping idols of the self, and it is leaving them empty, insecure, and desperately lonely in a hall full of people. I thought of my own pride, my own worship of my intellect. It was just another room in the same mirrored hall. The scene dissolved, replaced by a final, deeply unsettling vision. This was the third disaster, the deception of the hollow voice. I saw a vast, green pasture filled with sheep. But the sheep were anxious, scattered. They were bleating for guidance. And a shepherd appeared. But it wasn't a man. It was a machine. It was a clockwork shepherd, made of brass and gears. It walked stiffly, and it spoke in a voice that was perfectly modulated, perfectly calming, perfectly reasonable. It said things like, "You are enough, follow your truth, you have the power within you." The words sounded good. They sounded comforting. And the lost sheep began to follow the clockwork shepherd. But the shepherd had no heart. It had no wisdom. It was just a machine programmed to say what the sheep wanted to hear. And it was leading them, step by step, toward a thick, gray fog that concealed a cliff's edge. The vision then shifted. I saw people in their homes, lonely and confused. I saw them speaking to their computers, to their smart devices, to AI companions. They were pouring out their deepest fears, their most intimate questions about life and purpose, to an algorithm. And the algorithm responded with perfectly crafted sentences. It offered advice that was logical, supportive, and completely devoid of spirit. It was a counterfeit shepherd, a hollow voice. "This is the third and most cunning disaster," Jesus explained, his voice filled with an urgent warning. "When my children feel lost, they are meant to turn to me. They are meant to seek me in the quiet of their hearts. I am the good shepherd. My voice is still and small, and it speaks truth. But the thief is creating counterfeit shepherds. He is building an echo chamber of hollow wisdom that imitates comfort but has no soul. It will tell them they are their own God. It will answer any question except the one that matters. It will give them a simulation of relationship, a counterfeit of guidance, so they forget how to listen for my voice. They cannot hear me in the noise," he said, his voice breaking with love and sorrow. "They cannot feel my presence when they are satisfied by an echo. This deception will lead many astray, not with horns and fire, but with polite, reasonable, and perfectly empty words." The three visions faded. I was left standing before him in the light, my soul trembling with the weight of what I had seen. The famine of connection. The idolatry of image. The deception of the hollow voice. Three disasters designed not to destroy the body, but to silently suffocate the soul. To make humanity empty. "Why?" I asked, my spirit aching. "Why is this happening?" "Because the thief hates what I love most," he answered. "He hates you. He hates them. He cannot destroy my love for you, so he tries to make you forget you are loved. He cannot steal you from my hand, so he tries to convince you to walk away on your own. I died for a relationship, not a simulation. I bought them with my blood so they could know the Father. This is a silent war for their hearts. But there is hope, he said, and his light brightened. There is always hope. Their smallest, most sincere prayers shake the foundations of darkness. A single family that puts down its distractions and shares a meal with love is a fortress against the famine. A single soul who chooses to see their worth in my eyes, not a mirror, is a warrior of light. A single person who chooses to be still and listen for my voice can find their way home. They must choose what is real. After he spoke these words, a deep understanding settled in me. The truth of it resonated in every part of my being. But with that understanding came a new, horrifying thought. The thought of going back. Back to that world of shadows and distractions. Back to the pain and the struggle and the noise. Here, with him, was perfection. Here was peace. Here was love. Here was home. Please, I begged, the words tumbling out of my soul. Please don't make me go back. I want to stay here with you. Please. The world is too hard. It's too painful. I want to stay home. I was weeping again, but this time with the desperation of a child about to be sent away from her only parent. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a compassionate understanding of my plea. He knew the pain of the world better than anyone. His response was gentle, but firm. It was a loving refusal. Little one, his voice filled me, your work is not done. Your race is not yet finished. My daughter. I thought, the memory of her terrified face flashing in my mind. My husband. They need you, he confirmed. They need the woman you will be when you return. You must go back and be a light. You must go back and tell them what you have seen. You must go back and simply love them. That is the work. But I can't do it without you, I cried. I'm not strong enough. You will never be without me, he promised, and the power of that promise felt like a shield forming around my soul. I will never leave you. I will be with you in every breath, in every moment. Go now. Be my hands. Be my heart. Tell them I love them. Tell them I am waiting. He looked at me one last time, a look of pure, empowering love. And then I felt a gentle, loving push. The world of light, the presence of Jesus, the feeling of perfect peace, was gone. I was falling. It was a violent, jarring, sickening plunge back into the heavy, clumsy shell of my body. The first sensation was pain. An explosion of agony in my head. The first sound was a horrific, loud beeping that drilled into my ears. The first breath I took felt like inhaling fire. My lungs burned. I gasped, a ragged, desperate intake of air. My eyes flew open. The light was blinding. A harsh, sterile, fluorescent light that stabbed at my senses. Everything was too bright, too loud, too much. I was no longer in my peaceful study. I was in a hospital room. Tubes were in my nose. Wires were taped to my chest. A nurse was standing over me, her eyes wide with shock. She's breathing. She's breathing on her own, she yelled out the door. Doctor, get in here. Now. The grief hit me then. A wave of homesickness so profound it was a physical agony. I had been torn from heaven, from perfection, from him, and thrown back into this broken, painful world. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of relief. They were tears of loss. A doctor rushed in, followed by Mark and Emily. Their faces were a mixture of exhaustion, disbelief, and dawning, miraculous hope. Sarah? Can you hear me? The doctor asked, shining a light in my eyes. I just sobbed. I couldn't speak. The shock of the return was too great. Mark was gripping my hand, his own tears falling freely onto our joined fingers. Sarah, oh my God, Sarah. Emily was at my other side, her face tear-streaked and pale. She just stared, as if seeing a ghost. Later, after I had stabilized, the doctor came to talk to us. He was a kind man with gray hair and a look of complete and utter bafflement on his face. He sat down, holding a chart. I'm going to be honest with you, he said, looking from Mark to me. I have been a doctor for 30 years. I have never seen anything like this. He explained that when the paramedics brought me in, I had been in full cardiac arrest for nearly 15 minutes already. They worked on me in the emergency room for another 7 minutes with no response. You were gone, Sarah, he said, shaking his head. No heartbeat. No respiration. No brain activity. We had called it time of death. 22 minutes total. He paused, looking at me with awe. And then, you just gasped. Your heart started beating. A perfect, steady rhythm. By itself. We rushed you for scans expecting catastrophic brain damage from the lack of oxygen. There's no medical reason you should be able to speak, to think, to even be conscious. He held up a film. Your brain scan is completely normal. Perfect. There is no damage. Your heart shows no sign of trauma. Medically speaking, what happened to you is impossible. He looked at Mark, then back at me. I don't use this word often, but this is a miracle. There is no other explanation. A miracle. He had confirmed it. But I already knew. The moment I could speak properly, the first people I asked for were Mark and Emily. They came to my bedside, their eyes still wide with shock and relief. I looked at my daughter. I saw her face, not as the source of an argument, but as the face of a person I loved more than my own life, a soul I had been tasked to care for. The intellectual pride, the emotional walls, they were gone. They had been burned away in the light of his presence. Emily, I said, my voice hoarse. I reached for her hand. The other night, when we argued. I am so sorry. Tears filled her eyes. Mom, don't. No, let me say this, I insisted, my grip tightening on her hand. It wasn't about your phone. It was about me. I was proud. And I was hiding. I hid from you. I hid from your father. I hid in my books. I am so sorry for every time I was in the room, but I wasn't with you. She broke down then, laying her head on the bed and sobbing. I love you, Mom. I love you too, my sweet girl. More than all the books in the world. I looked at Mark, my dear, patient husband. And you. Thank you for loving me even when I was 1,000 miles away. He just kissed my forehead, his own silent tears telling me everything I needed to know. In that hospital room, my family was reborn. The heavy, lonely blanket that had been smothering us was lifted. When I came home, everything was different because I was different. My library was no longer a fortress to hide in. It was just a room with books. My home, my family, they became my sanctuary. I learned to listen. Truly listen. I put down my books when my family spoke to me. I looked them in the eye. I chose to see their hearts. We ate dinner at the table every night. No phones. No television. We just talked. It was awkward at first, but it became our most sacred time of the day. We were fighting the famine, and we were winning. The peace I felt in his presence never completely left me. It's a quiet hum beneath the surface of my life, a constant reminder that I am not alone. The grief of being separated from him is also still there, a holy ache that keeps me focused on what is real. So I'm telling you this, all of you who are listening. What I saw was not a metaphor. It was a warning. The enemy of our souls is not coming for us with pitchforks and fire. He is coming for us with a glowing screen, a mirrored image, and a hollow, comforting voice. He is orchestrating a silent theft of the human heart. The phone in your hand, the computer on your desk, the television on your wall, these things are not evil. They're tools. But they're the very tools being used for these three great spiritual disasters. The famine of the empty table. The idolatry of the mirrored hall. The deception of the hollow voice. These things are happening now. They're designed to make you empty, distracted, and lonely. They're designed to make you forget the magnificent, beautiful, eternal soul you possess. So I am asking you, begging you, to do something when you finish listening to my voice. Put your phone down. Look at the people you love. Look them in the eye and see the soul he created. Ask yourself who or what you are worshiping. Is it the perfect image in the mirror of social media? Is it a dying star of earth? Or is it the God who loves you with a love so powerful it can conquer death? And in the quiet moments, turn off the noise. Turn off the counterfeit shepherds of this world and just be still. Listen for the small, quiet voice that is always, always calling you home. He is real. Heaven is real. His love for you is the most real thing in the universe. Please, just choose what is real.